This video is about heart as a pump. The heart is an amazing organ. It pumps oxygen and nutrient-rich blood throughout our body to sustain life. This fist-sized powerhouse beats, expands and contracts 100,000 times per day, pumping 5 or 6 quarts of blood each minute, or about 200 gallons per day. Your heart is a key part of your cardiovascular system. It also includes all your blood vessels that carry your blood from the heart to the body and then back to the heart. As the heart beats, it pumps blood through a system of blood vessels called the circulatory system. The vessels are elastic, muscular tubes that carry blood to every part of the body. Blood is essential in addition to carrying fresh oxygen from the lungs and nutrients to the body's tissues. It also takes the body's waste products, including carbon dioxide, away from the tissues. This is necessary to sustain life and promote the health of all parts of the body. Blood and its constituents. Blood is a constantly circulating fluid with numerous cells and proteins suspended in it. It provides nutrition, oxygen to tissues, organs, and body parts, and also helps in removal of waste materials from organs and body parts. An adult human body contains 5 to 6 liters of blood. In this, 55% is plasma, fluid part, and 45% formed elements, solid part. It provides nutrition, oxygen to tissues, organs, and body parts, and also helps in removal of waste materials from organs and body parts. An adult human body consists 5 to 8 liters of blood. In this, 55% is plasma, 45% formed elements or solid part, 90 to 92% of plasma is water, and 6 to 8% is protein such as fibrinogen, albumin, and globulin. Fibrin blood coagulation. Immunoglobulins destroy foreign bodies entering the body. Albumin, osmoregulation and nourishment. Plasma also contains a small amount of salts and materials like Na plus, K plus, Ca2 plus, Mg2 plus, Cl minus, HCO3 minus, like that. And formed elements are classified into 2: blood cells, leukocytes, erythrocytes, platelets. Leukocytes are further divided into 2: granulocytes and granulocytes. Granulocytes in the sense neutrophil, basophil, eosinophil, agranulocytes, monocytes, and lymphocytes. Here you could see a picture which depicts all these blood cells. Pictorial depiction. Erythrocyte, platelets, leukocytes, monocyte, eosinophil, basophil, neutrophil, and lymphocyte. Heart as a pump. The heart is located under the ribcage, slightly to the left of your breastbone, sternum, between your legs. Slightly to the left, not to the right, to the left. Okay. The outside of the heart is made of muscle. The strong muscular walls contract, squeeze, pumping blood to the rest of the body. On the surface of heart, there are coronary arteries which supply oxygen-rich blood to the heart muscle itself. The major blood vessels that enter the heart are the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, and the pulmonary veins. The pulmonary artery exists in the heart and carries oxygen-poor blood to the lungs. The aorta exists and carries oxygen-rich blood to the rest of the body. Here we could see a picture which depicts all these portions of heart. From upper body, superior vena cava, to right lung, superior node. From right lung, pulmonary veins, atrioventricular node, right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, inferior vena cava, arteries, aorta, pulmonary artery to left lung, from left lung, pulmonary veins, left atrium, mitral bicuspid valve, left ventricle, Purkinje fibers, septum, aorta. The auricles and ventricles contract and relax simultaneously to pump blood out of the heart. As the blood leaves each chamber, it passes through our 4 heart valves within the heart. Each valves prevent blood from flowing in the wrong direction. The main valves of the heart are mitral valve, bicuspid valve, lies between left auricle and left ventricle. Tricuspid valve lies between right auricle and right ventricle. Aortic valve lies in the opening of major heart vessel aorta from left ventricle. Then pulmonic valves or semilunar valves lies in the opening of major blood vessels, pulmonary vein and pulmonary artery. Then double circulation. The right and left sides of the heart work together by pumping blood repeatedly over and over, causing blood to flow continuously to the heart, lungs, and various body parts. The blood reaches the heart twice during one circulation, and the phenomenon is known as double circulation. The same blood flows twice during the completion of a single circulation. Double circulation mainly consists of 2 main circulations: pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. First, systemic circulation. systemic capillaries, veins and venules, vena cava, pulmonary artery, arterioles, lung capillaries, mixing of this venules, pulmonary veins, aorta, arteries and ventricles like that. Then pulmonary circulation. In pulmonary circulation, deoxygenated blood from the heart, right ventricle, is pumped and transported into the lungs through pulmonary artery. In lungs, blood gets oxygenated by simple diffusion in alveoli, and carbon dioxide from the blood is diffused into the alveoli, which gets expelled during respiration. The oxygenated blood from the alveoli is taken back to the lung, left auricle, by pulmonary vein. Circulation starts from the right ventricle and ends in left auricle, is called pulmonary circulation. Then systemic circulation. In systemic circulation, oxygenated blood from the heart, left ventricle, is pumped and transported to various body parts, organs and tissues through aorta. Deoxygenated blood from body parts, organs and tissues diffuse into the capillaries and reach the heart, right auricle, through vagus nerve. Two types of vagus nerves are superior vena cava. Two types of vena cavas. Two types of vena cavas are superior vena cava and carries deoxygenated blood from upper part of the body such as head, neck and forelimbs into the heart. Inferior vena cava carries deoxygenated blood from lower part of the body such as hind limbs into the heart. Then circulation starting from left ventricle and ending in right auricle is called systemic circulation. Circulation of blood through the heart. Superior vena cava, right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary valve, pulmonary artery, lungs, left atrium, left ventricle, aorta, rest of the body. Once again, superior vena cava, right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary valve, pulmonary artery, lungs, left atrium, left ventricle, aorta, and rest of the body. Circulation of blood through heart. The blood vessels, arteries, veins and capillaries. Mainly there are three types of blood vessels in the heart that carries blood from heart and to the heart. These include arteries, veins and blood capillaries. Arteries are small branching vessels that carries highly oxygenated blood from heart to body parts, tissues and organs. Next, aorta, pulmonary arteries and exception. In this carry deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. Small branches. Pulmonary arteries and exception. This carry deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. Small branches of minute blood vessels arising from the arteries are called arterioles. The vasa vasorum is a network of small blood vessels that supply the walls of large blood vessels such as elastic arteries and large veins. Then veins. These are large vessels that carry deoxygenated blood from various body parts, tissues and organs into the heart. Vena cavas. Pulmonary vein is an exception. This carries oxygenated blood from various body parts, tissues and organs into the heart. Small branches of minute blood vessels arising from the veins are called venules. Blood capillaries. These are small, thin blood vessels. Such vessels connect arteries and veins. The thin walls of capillaries allow oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients and other waste products to pass to and from organ cells. Many capillaries are joined in the form of a network called the network of capillaries. Artery, vein, arterioles, capillaries, cross-sectional area, arteriole, capillary. Coronary arteries of the heart. Coronary arteries of the heart. Left coronary artery, circumflex artery, left marginal artery, diagonal arteries, left anterior descending artery, posterior descending artery, right acute marginal artery, right coronary artery, like that. The chambers of heart is full of blood, but heart receives no nourishment from this blood. Heart receives its own supply of blood from a network of arteries called coronary arteries. Two major coronary arteries branch off from aorta near the point where aorta and left ventricle meet. These are right coronary artery supplies blood to right auricle and left right ventricle. Branches of right coronary artery are called posterior descending artery or PDA, which supplies blood to bottom portion of left ventricle. Left main coronary artery, this branches into two. Circumflex artery supplies blood to left auricle and back of left ventricle. Left anterior descending artery supplies blood to front and bottom of left ventricle and front of septum, which are the right coronary artery and left coronary artery. The cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system consists of the heart and a system of blood vessels, arteries, capillaries, veins through which blood is transported from the heart to the tissues of the body and back again. The heart is a double pump driving the blood through two circuits. The pulmonary circuit conveys blood from the right side of the heart to the lungs and then returns it into the left side of the heart. The systemic circuit carries blood from the left side of the heart to the rest of the body and returns it to the right side of the heart. If there is no mechanism for constantly changing or refreshing the tissue fluid of the body, it would soon become depleted and food and oxygen and become saturated with waste products. In addition to its primary function of transporting various substances to and from body cells, the circulatory system contributes to cellular metabolism, balance, homeostasis or fluid volume, balance of pH, hydrogen ion concentration, homeostasis of body temperature, and defense against microorganisms. Oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. The primary responsibility of the heart is to pump blood throughout the circulatory system. What is the center of circulatory system? The heart is an essential organ for maintaining the overall functioning of the body. The cardiovascular system consists of many veins and blood vessels which ensure that all parts of the body are provided with an adequate amount of oxygen and nutrients to function efficiently. Without a sufficient supply of oxygen, all bodily function would fail, causing organ damage or organ death. Next topic, cardiac muscles. 3 types of cardiac tissue in your body: cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle tissue, and smooth muscle tissue. First, cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle, and smooth muscle. Cardiac muscle, it is involuntary striated muscle that constitutes the main tissue of the wall of the heart. The cardiac muscle or myocardium. Cardiac muscle tissue is only found in your heart, where it performs coordinated contractions that allow your heart to pump blood through your circulatory system. Superior vena cava, aorta, pulmonary artery, right atrium, right ventricle, inferior vena cava, left ventricle, left atrium, pulmonary veins, pulmonary artery, monocytes, intercalated discs, etc. Then 3 major types of cardiac muscle. Heart is composed of 3 major types of cardiac muscle: atrial muscle, ventricular muscle, and specialized excitatory and conductive muscle fibers. Once again, atrial muscle, ventricular muscle, specialized excitatory and conductive muscle fibers. Just atrial and ventricular types. Atrial and ventricular types. The atrial and ventricular types of muscles contract in much the same way as skeletal muscle, except that the duration of contraction is much longer. Excitatory and conductive fibers. The specialized excitatory and conductive fibers of the heart, however, not contact like atrium or ventricles. The atrial and ventricular types of muscle contract in much the same way as skeletal muscle, except that the duration of contraction is much longer. Excitatory and conductive fibers. The specialized excitatory and conductive fibers of the heart, however, not contact like atrium or ventricle, because they contain few contractile fibrils. Instead, they exhibit either automatic rhythmical electrical discharge in the form of action potentials or conduction of the action potentials through the heart, providing an excitatory system that controls the rhythmical beating of the heart. Excitatory and conductive fibers. The specialized excitatory and conductive fibers of the heart, however, not contact like atrium or ventricles, because they contain few contractile fibrils. Instead, they exhibit either automatic rhythmical electrical discharges in form of action potentials or conduction of the action potential through the heart, providing an excitatory system that controls the rhythmical beating of the heart. Then the dark area between the cells of cardiac muscle is the intercalated disc that contains gap junctions and serves as ion continuity between the cells. The cardiac muscle is a syncytium, which means that because this system of intercalated discs and gap junctions, the action potential is allowed to be transmitted from one cell to the other in the longitudinal axis of the cardiac muscle. The heart actually is composed of 2 syncytiums: the atrial syncytium, which constitute the walls of 2 atria, and the ventricular syncytium, which constitute the walls of 2 ventricles. Here we could see a picture which depicts the syncytial arrangement, syncytial interconnecting nature of the cardiac muscle fibers. Cardiac muscle have myofibrils that contain actin and myosin filaments, almost identical to those found in skeletal muscles. Cardiac muscle has myofibrils that contain actin and myosin filaments, almost identical to those found in skeletal muscle. These filaments lie side by side and side along one another during contraction in the same manner as occurs in skeletal muscle. Cardiac muscle is a syncytium. Cardiac cells are so interconnected that when one of these cells becomes excited, the action potential spreads to all of them from cell to cell throughout the lattice work interconnections. The atria are separated from the ventricles by fibrous tissue that surrounds the atrioventricular valvular opening between the atria and ventricles. Normally, potentials are not conducted syncytium from the atrial syncytium into the ventricular syncytium directly through the fibrous tissue. Once again, I am going to read. Cardiac cells are so interconnected that when one of these cells becomes excited, the action potential spreads to all of them from cell to cell throughout the latticework interconnections. The atria are separated from the ventricles by fibrous tissues that surrounds the atrioventricular valvular opening between the atria and ventricle. Normally, potentials are not conducted sensation from the atrial sensation into the ventricular sensation directly through this fibrous tissue. Instead, they are conducted only by way of a specialized conductive system called AV bundle, a bundle of connective fibers. Cardiac cells are connected by intercalated disc. Intercalated discs house desmosomes and gap junction. Desmosomes provide strength so that the cell do not get ripped apart during contraction. Cell gap junctions are made of connection proteins and form a pore through which the cells are able to communicate. Capillary, intercalated disc, gap junction, nucleus, cardiac muscle fiber, desmosomes, and gap junction. Desmosomes, mitochondrion, intercalated discs, opening of transverse tubule, gap junctions, cardiac muscle fiber, nucleus, sarcolemma, cardiac muscle fiber. Desmosomes, mitochondrion, intercalated disc, opening of transverse tubule, gap junctions, cardiac muscle fiber, nucleus, sarcolemma, cardiac muscle fibers. Mitochondrion, desmosomes, intercalated discs, opening of transverse tubule, gap junctions. Okay. Then action potential of the cardiac muscle. How did the action potential of the cardiac muscle different from that of the skeletal muscle? Two different things. In cardiac muscle, the action potential is caused by opening of two types of channels. The same voltage activated fast sodium channels as those in skeletal muscle, and another entirely different population of L-type calcium channels. L-type in the sense slow calcium channels, and which are also called calcium sodium channels. The second population of channels differ from the first sodium channels in that they are slower to open and, even more important, remain open for several tenths of a second. Secondly, immediately after the onset of an action potential, the permeability of the cardiac muscle membrane for potassium ion degenerate decrease about 5-fold, an effect that does not occur in skeletal muscle. An action potential of cardiac muscle is characterized by appearing of plateau, a prolonged in the period of depolarization. Phases of cardiac muscle action potential. The action potential activation of the muscle is divided into 5 phases. Each of the phases of an action potential is caused by time-dependent changes in the permeability of plasma membrane to potassium ions, calcium ions, and calcium ions. Sodium ions. Phase 1. Phase 0. Depolarization. Fast sodium channels open. When the cardiac cell is stimulated and depolarized, the membrane potential becomes more positive. Voltage-gated sodium channels, fast sodium channels open and permit sodium to rapidly flow into the cell and depolarize it. The membrane potential reaches about plus 20 millivolts before the sodium channels close. Voltage-gated sodium channels, fast sodium channels open and permit sodium to rapidly flow into the cell and depolarize it. The membrane potential reaches about plus 20 millivolts before the sodium channels close. Then phase 1, initial repolarization. Fast sodium channels close. The sodium channels close, the cell begin to repolarize. The potassium ions leave the cell to open potassium channels. Leave to plateau. Phase 2, plateau. Calcium channels open and fast potassium channels close. A brief initial depolarization occurs and this action potential then plateaus as a result of increased calcium ion permeability and decreased potassium ion permeability. The voltage-gated calcium ion channels open slowly during phase 1 and 0 and calcium enters the cell. Potassium channels then close and the combination of decreased potassium ion efflux and increased calcium ion influx causes the action potential to plateau. And phase 3, rapid repolarization. Calcium channels close and slow potassium channels open. The closure of calcium ion channels and the increased potassium ion permeability permitting potassium ions to rapidly exit the cell ends the plateau and returns the cell membrane potential to its resting level. Phase 4, resting membrane potential, average about 90 millivolts. Here you could see a picture. It depicts this rhythmical action potential in millivolts for Purkinje fiber and from a ventricular muscle fiber, recorded by means of microelectrodes. Plateau, Purkinje fiber, ventricular muscle. Velocity of signal conduction in cardiac muscle. The velocity of conduction of the excitatory action potential signal along both atrial and ventricular muscle fiber is about 0.3 to 0.5 m per second. The velocity of conduction in the specialized heart conductor system in the Purkinje fibers is as great as 4 m per second in most parts of the system, which allows reasonably rapid conduction of the excitatory signal to the different parts of the heart. Mechanisms of excitation, contraction, coupling. The term excitation, contraction, coupling refers to the mechanism by which the action potential causes the myofibrils of muscle to contract. Mechanism of excitation, contraction, coupling is same as that of for skeletal muscle. In addition to the calcium ions, there are cilia released into the sarcoplasm from the cisternae of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Calcium ions also diffuse into the sarcoplasm from the T tubules themselves at the time of the action potential. It opens voltage-dependent calcium channels in the membranes of the T tubule. Calcium ions in the sarcoplasm then interact with the troponin to initiate cross-bridge formation and contraction by the same basic mechanism. Without the calcium from the T tubules, the strength of cardiac muscle contraction would be reduced considerably because the sarcoplasmic reticulum of cardiac muscles well developed than that of skeletal muscles. T tubules, strength of cardiac muscle contraction would be reduced considerably. Excitation, contraction, coupling. Cisternae of sarcoplasmic reticulum, T tubules. Without the calcium, the C tubules, the strength of cardiac muscle contraction would be reduced considerably. And because the sarcoplasmic reticulum of cardiac muscle will develop than that of skeletal muscle, does not store enough calcium to provide full contraction. The strength of contraction of cardiac muscle depends to a great extent on the concentration of calcium ions in the extracellular fluids. Duration of contraction. Cardiac muscle begins to contract a few milliseconds after the action potential begins and continues to contract until a few milliseconds after the action potential ends. Therefore, the duration of contraction of cardiac muscle is mainly a function of the duration of the action potential, including the plateau, about 0.2 seconds in atrial muscle and 0.3 seconds in ventricular muscle. So, properties of cardiac muscle: automaticity, capability of contract even in the absence of neural control; rhythmicity, automaticity, capability to contract even in the absence of neural control. Then rhythmicity, heartbeats are extremely regular. Contractibility, cardiac muscle contracts in response to a stimulus. Excitability, ability of the cardiac muscle to respond to different stimuli. Contractibility and excitability. Then conductivity, impulses produced in the SA node is conducted by the specialized conducting pathway. Conductivity, impulses produced in the SA node is conducted by the specialized conducting pathway. Then distensibility occurs due to compliance of the cardiac muscle. And then functional sensation due to the presence of numerous gap junctions. All or none loop. If the heart is stimulated with subthreshold stimuli, no response is seen. A threshold stimulus is the weakest stimulus that evokes a response. Amplitude of contraction in response to the subthreshold stimuli remains the same as that with the threshold stimuli. Length-tension relationship, Frank-Starling law. The force of contraction of cardiac muscle is directly proportional to the initial length of the muscle fiber. Length-tension relationship. Automaticity, rhythmicity, contractibility, excitability. Excitability in the sense ability of cardiac muscle to respond to different stimuli. Conductivity, distensibility, compliance of the cardiac muscle. Functional sensation due to the presence of numerous gap junctions.